Hi everyone, it's Penny Black and Jill Foster here with another PB&J card class, and today I'm super excited to be revealing our new Flower of the Month kit starter. And so just a reminder, why a monthly kit starter? This is just a small collection each month of just two new stamps that can really keep one engaged and active in their hobby without overspending or having too many choices. This kit starter offers lots of flexibility. You can mix and match with your stash, and each month we will use the same formula to build our kit using previously released never going out of style penny black supplies. And then this is a commitment free kit starter. So our kit starter program does not require any long-term commitment or yearly sign up. You just see what the new Flower of the Month kit starter stamps are each month when we introduce them and decide if you would like to purchase. It's simply just month to month floral fun and inspiration. So, new this month, this is our third Flower of the Month kit starter, are daisies, which I think are one of the happiest flowers. We have Dainty Daisies and the cutout dies to go with those, and hand picked. So you have the flower stamp and then the holder for the flowers. So let's take a closer look. I love that with these kit starters, you have the flower. We also have this beautiful image that can be used as a border, background, details, and then this holder. It's just country charm, and you'll notice too there's sentiments included, so you can really get a ton out of these stamps. And like I said before, we do have the cutout dies available for those too, which really open up lots and lots of design opportunities. So each month we show you how a way that you can build a kit with your stash, or you can mix and match with new and old to build your kit. So using this formula each month, but changing up the elements that kind of fall into each category. So this month for our frame background die, I've dug out a favorite of mine, our Frame It. Our embossing folder is variegated, a really, you can see it better in the future of this video, but it's just a really beautiful overall pattern. A die cut sentiment, I'm using the Thanks from our Give Thanks die. Die cut flowers, so these fit in the new kit starter holder, that water pitcher. I'm using our Koi die cut. And then I like to pull out from my stash another die cut holder that can fit the new flowers. And this month I have pulled out the 51 765 boots. Now remember, all of these kit selection, these items can keep mixing and matching with previous and future Flower of the Month kit starter sets too. So let's take a closer look at those items that I've pulled from previously released Penny Black products, which I love. They never go out of style. This is that Frame It die, and what I do is once I've picked the items for my kit, I go through and I just cut a whole bunch of those, and I stamp a whole bunch of the new flowers and the new holders, and I emboss that embossing folder, and that's that variegated embossing folder. Isn't that beautiful? You can use that. I've even used that one at Christmas time. So super versatile, these items that you can use again and again. There's that word thanks from the Give Thanks die, and I love how this fits across the holder. And then this is that die cut Koi. Just a really lovely, simple, run it through the die cutting machine once or twice and you'll have it. You can trim apart that leaf and adjust it in different ways. And then these are the boots die cut, and they work really beautifully with these daisies in this set, just showing you here. And you can slide those inside of there and also mix and match with previous kit starter sets. So as I build my kit, I pre-prep all of these items. I just keep them in envelopes and a baggie, and I can pull them out at any time during the month, and that new kit starter really gets me inspired. Now this is the essentials, and I'm reached for these every month, so I'm carrying these through every single month. The background basic stencil set, posted and posted cutout, and the butterflies from the soaring die. So now that we've got the kit set up, here are some coloring ideas using the new kit starter stamps. And to begin with is just some very basic and beautiful coloring. So I am using Distress Ink Reinkers used as watercolors to do all of my painting today, but you can also use whatever coloring medium you love. So if that's markers or colored pencils, get out whatever you love and use that. So I've stamped this first one using Ranger Archival ink in the color of Watering Can, and I've stamped that onto Canson 140-pound watercolor paper, and I'm just putting a touch. I'm picking up that Reinker ink on my brush, and when it's most concentrated, I'm putting a touch of that towards the center of the flower. Then off camera, I rinse off my brush, pat it dry, and then go back and blend that. And you get a very gentle blend from dark to light, and you can see how easy this is. You do not need to go for perfection. In fact, leaving a little bit of white, especially at the tips of the petals, just adds to the charm of the illustration and also of watercolor. It's not meant to be perfect. So do not let that you see all these little petals on here make you feel like this is going to be a really difficult one to color. As you can see, it is really quite easy, and that detail comes through just from the illustration. It doesn't have to be in your coloring then. I did the same thing on the leaves with the Distress Ink Reinkers, putting the color where I wanted it darker first, rinsing off my brush and going back to blend. And I will link for you down in the YouTube description box a more detailed video of my watercoloring techniques and comments about paper and brushes and all of that. So I'll link that for you down below if you want more information on that. Also, all of the exact colors that I'm using, inks, stamps, products, everything will be listed and linked for you down in that YouTube description box below, including the kit starter elements and the build-a-kit, and the essentials are offered at discounted bundle pricing, so I will link that for you down below. Now here is that wonderful picture, and I've again stamped that with Ranger Archival ink in the color of Watering Can, and I am picking up my ink from my palette, and when it's most concentrated, putting it where I want it to be darkest, rinsing off my brush, patting it dry, and just going back and blending that out. Now wherever that ink went first, it's just remains a little bit darker because it was more concentrated when it was added to that area. So very simply, you can just get a nice blend from dark to light. And you don't need to worry too much like which side should be darkest or where the shadow should fall. I find with charming images like this, just having variation of dark and light makes it look complete, makes it look interesting, and just adds to that style. So it's very stress-free coloring. If you like to get into more of the details of shading and all of that, you certainly can, but it doesn't have to be difficult to make beautiful cards. Now I did pick up a little bit of a rusty hinge. So first was Scattered Straw, and then this is a little rusty hinge Distress Ink Reinker. And while that was still wet, I just put a little bit there on the sides, and just again for just a little bit of variation to make it interesting. And I'll add a touch there up on the handle. And then with the cutout dies, you can cut these out and just start playing with all the different designs. Now I wanted to show you some sort of no line or kind of faux no line watercolor. This was stamped now using Memento Toffee Crunch ink onto Canson 140-pound cold pressed watercolor paper. And here is the easiest way that you can get white daisies that look complete and shaded. I've picked up a little Faded Jeans Distress Ink Reinker right off the palette. I'm putting it just right towards the center of the flower, and then I rinse off my brush, pat it dry, and go back and just blend that out. And it's just enough shading so that it doesn't look like you forgot to color it, but it's so easy. And honestly, these white daisies are my favorite ones to work with. You can do different colored backgrounds and play around with the color of the picture that they're going inside of, but they're just so cheerful and happy. So while that top part is drying, I'm just going to jump down here and paint the leaves using the Peeled Paint Distress Ink Reinker, putting it where I wanted it darkest. Off camera, rinsed off my brush, patted it dry on a paper towel, and went back to blend. And then I'll go ahead and get the stem of the flower here. And you can always go back and blend a little bit more, darken things up if you want. Now I want to be sure that blue is completely dry before I start painting in the center of that flower. So I would just use my heat tool there to dry that, and now I'm just going to pull in some Scattered Straw. and a little bit of rusty hinge. And I just love the way that this looks and how easy it is to color that in and have this just charming, happy white daisy. Now we'll do a little bit more with a little bit more color mixing and blending. So again, this one is stamped with Memento Toffee Crunch ink onto Canson 140-pound watercolor paper. And I'm going to put down that scattered straw distress ink reinker, about half of the flower. Then pat off my brush and go back and blend that. And then I'll do the other half. Then I'm going to grab some of that rusty hinge distress ink reinker and put that down towards the center. So I kind of filled in the whole of the petal with that scattered straw, and then I did that rusty hinge to add that shading towards the center. Sort of like where we added the blue for the white daisy, I just added this darker shade of the yellow towards the center. And then I just playing around because the flower was yellow, I decided to go with a brown, almost give kind of a sunflower vibe to this. And I love that you can play around with all of these different color combinations. So this is the Gathered Twigs Distress Ink Reinker. I did put too much there, so I am going in with what would be called a thirsty brush. So I've patted it pretty dry on my paper towel, and I can go back in and lift some of that brown. Now here this is stamped again with the the Memento Toffee Crunch ink, and I'm just going to play around a little bit with different ways that you can color in this picture. So here I'm using Broken China Distress Ink Reinker, putting it along the outsides when it's most concentrated, rinsing off my brush, patting it dry, and going back and blending that. And I did that over the entire area of the picture, which you could totally stop right there. I think that's beautiful. But I just wanted to show you some other options if you want to play around with your coloring. I'm going to use my heat tool to dry that. Now I'm going to grab Faded Jeans Distress Ink Reinker, and I'm going to put that on the top. On the sides, again, most concentrated, picking it up from the palette, but only in certain sections of the picture. So it gives it like sort of a subtle stripe, but it's still blue, all blue. So it just adds a little more interest to the picture. And so it's just a fun way you can play around. If you want to do more with it, you certainly can. And I really love how this looks in the end, and it's quite easy to do. It's just one extra color that you add, and then I am going to pick that up most concentrated off the palette there and paint in just these lines. And again, this stamp, it's deceptively simple because it is charming, and when you do play around with different colors and this little bit of the stripe here, it just is really just so fun. I think you could even use this at Christmas and put like poinsettia die cuts in there. I mean, these holder stamps are really versatile, as versatile as the flowers, because of what you can put in them using other dies and other stamps from your stash. Even Christmas, like greenery, pine needles. I mean, you could just do anything inside of here, change up the color of that. So go ahead and use that heat tool to dry that. And you can see just that subtle bit of a sort of striping effect of those two sections that have that faded jeans on top of the broken china. And then I'll go ahead and just get the handle here, starting with the broken china and then picking up the faded jeans Distress Ink Reinker and putting that where I want it to be the most dark. Then I'll rinse off my brush, pat it dry, and go back and blend that. So stay tuned. Don't leave me yet. I hope you're not too bored. But I wanted to show you some mixing and matching next using the previous month's kit starters with this new kit starter with the daisies to see how you can get so much out of these. But don't worry, I will be showing you lots of cards with this new daisy set coming up in this video. So here you can see you can mix and match with more than one daisy inside of the pictures. You can do one. Of course, there is also some leaves and greenery that you can that are a part of this set. So look at that kit starter. There's so much you can do with it. But then I want to show you, here are the tulips from our first Flower of the Month kit starter. Look how beautiful that looks in this new holder. Here is another previous holder, the sprinkles, and look how wonderful the daisy looks inside of there. So you can just keep building and building upon. These are the kind of stamps I think that go so far. Here's the hydrangeas from last month, and look at that inside of this month's holder. I think that's so pretty. Then you can also start mixing and matching and putting different flowers together. There's the boots. That's the other holder that we've had. Here's this month's daisy inside of there. And you could fill that up with a whole bunch of daisies. Wouldn't that be fun this time of year? Different colors or all the same color. Play around with different colors of the boots. So another way to approach this is also just to stamp and paint and color and have fun while you're doing that, and then cut them all out and just have a mixing and matching session with them. Here, look at that, where you can put two different, this is actually my favorite of all of these. The hydrangeas, the daisy inside of that picture mixed together. I just love it. So pulling it all together, here are the cards I created with this month's kit starter and also the kit that I built from my stash. Here you can see the new stamps, but with that frame die and the embossing folder in the background. I love this with just a masked off inked corner and then that stamp along that background stamp that's included with the kit starter set. Here I've used it again along the bottom, and then there's that die cut sentiment. Here from my essentials, I got to make a postage with the flower of the month. Again, that background stamping, that's a part of the set. You can even use these for one layer cards, so I didn't use the cutouts with them. Very pretty with that embossing from our kit there. Here I've put them inside of the boots that from the stash, and here I've used our die cut flower from our stash inside of that holder, the frame, the embossing folder from the kit, just mixing and matching and having lots of fun. I hope you're as excited as I am about these daisies. Be sure you subscribe for our next video. Happy stamping!